New reason to contact those legislators and let them know what is happening and make sure they make the link between policies that they could pass that could make that happen more often in more places. That it's not a matter of a few volunteers, really worthy people taking action on their own and that's it. Government doesn't need to do anything. We need a sea change here, a revolution in energy, and so we need people who are in government to do their part. Maybe Steve remembers when, I don't really know how this happened because I'm not that close with Governor Pawlenty. In fact, I just met him the day that I was moderating his forum in Ely. But I was selected to moderate that forum, and one of the things I made clear to do that I try to do whenever I'm on a panel with elected officials is to say to them what we talk about in our offices at Fresh Energy, which is when you look at the depth of this problem of needing to get to a clean energy economy and needing to address global warming, and you look at all of the respected sectors of society who are speaking out and saying that we need to do something. You look at everyone from religious leaders to military leaders to war veterans to the very smart students we have in Minnesota who are projecting forward 50 years and not liking what they're seeing. And when you ask yourself, what is it we need to do in 2010 to address this problem? We need to be able to say we did everything we could for this problem and that it worked to solve this problem. And remember, we have to remember, those of us who have children and grandchildren and younger people coming up who know what we do for a living and know what we do for avocations, those people 10 years from now, 20 years from now, are going to be assessing the situation. And they're going to be looking at Wikipedia or whatever the analog to Wikipedia is at that time, and they can do a simple history research. What is it that happened or didn't happen in 2010 to move us to a clean energy economy? And I think some of them, I know I have 10 nieces and nephews scattered around this country, and they know what I do for a living. They're going to come to me and they're going to say, Jay, Aunt Jay, or some of them call me Aunt Jay, depending on where they're from. They're going to say, you ran a global warming solutions program for a very respected nonprofit in the Midwest in 2010. What did you do? And then at that forum, I turn to Senator Klobuchar and I say, if Senator Klobuchar is lucky enough at that point to have grandchildren, some of them are going to come to her and say, Grandma Amy, you were the senior United States Senator for the state of Minnesota in 2010. What did you do? And if Governor Pawlenty is fortunate to have enough to have grandchildren in 10 or 20 years, they're going to come to him and say, Grandpa, you were the governor of the state of Minnesota and the leader of the Midwestern Governors Association, and your focus was clean energy in 2008, 2010. What did you do? And you know what? My nieces and nephews are not going to be interested in what I did in my own home if I didn't take action at work as well. And they shouldn't be interested in what kind of cars Amy Klobuchar drives. They should be interested in what policies she voted for to change the kind of cars that we're all driving. And those distant relatives of now Governor Pawlenty shouldn't be interested in, what kind of whistle-stop tour he was taking and what future office he was hoping for. But they should know, what about that climate action plan that you commissioned and hand-picked the members for? Did you get that passed and did you achieve an 80% reduction for the state of Minnesota? So I encourage everyone to think their highest and best thoughts. To me, what seems to be most lacking is more people talking to each other rather than fewer, tighter groups talking to one another going forward. The final irony in this, last Thursday when Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid announced that he wasn't going to move a carbon cap bill, that same day, the news out of the China Daily was that in its next 5-year plan that begins in 2011, China is going to have a carbon cap and trade system so that it can meet its goals for climate emissions. So when you think about that in a time when we've got a vigorous, I don't even know whether it's a movement, but vigorous Tea Party voices saying essentially that there's something very wrong with government. And the government that is moving forward is the non-democracy. wow, does it even cause people to think, what is it that democracy can achieve for us if after all of these decades we can't even set a limit on carbon and move our society to a clean energy economy? I think also that one thing that is greatly missing is many more examples of energy efficiency and renewable energy, how it can work in Minnesota, how it can save money and create jobs, and the tie to how we get much more of this. And so the kind of stories that I know are developing in places like Ely need to get into the heads of policymakers so that they know what they have something to talk about, and that they really get it, that what we're talking about is not pie in the sky, but is taking local initiatives and taking them national and global going forward. I'll leave you with a thought that I've actually stolen from one of my friends. He is an architect who works for one of the firms in the Twin Cities, the White Group, that has been responsible for a lot of the energy efficiency design and making buildings that are bonded with government money that we pay for much more efficient from the get-go. And his name is David Ajadi, and he said something that I thought was very wise a couple of months ago. He said, you know, look at us. We are the healthiest, best educated generation in human history. The healthiest, best educated generation in human history. Let's go out and do great things. There is no excuse for it. Thank you. Lots of time for Q&A and discussion, so please.
We have a Democratic primary with 3 candidates. Would you comment on those 3 candidates' views on energy policy?
Let's see. Well, remember that I'm with a nonpartisan organization,
yeah.
So we have been asked to endorse all of them. We're not endorsing anyone. That's not what we do. That's not in our IRS guideline. However, one thing we're doing is, and these will be available publicly in about a week, is we've been participating with the Minnesota Environmental Partnership in putting together briefings for candidates on energy policy. What are the things, where is Minnesota at, and what does Minnesota need to do in the next 1 year, 2 year, 3 years? In other words, what can the next governor do that would really help move energy policy forward? So part of that is, what are the laws that need to be either passed or actually really enacted to make sure that we're really making that happen? But an interesting part of our discussions as we wrote those documents is thinking about all of the opportunities for the next governor in appointments that he or she is going to make. So in part of it, who is the head of the Pollution Control Agency? Who is the head of the DNR? Who's the head of MnDOT? Because every single agency, who's the head of our health department? And is that person going to be charged with dealing with future heat waves? Every part of state government ties into what's happening with climate change and clean energy. The governor also appoints all of the members of the Public Utilities Commission, which regulates our utilities. So, for example, those utilities are now under a mandate to get a certain percentage of renewable energy. They're under a mandate for energy efficiency. That PUC is in charge of making sure those mandates are met. If and when there is a federal carbon cap, there will be money collected from polluters who are paying to buy carbon permits. And some of that money needs to come back to ratepayers in Minnesota. And it will be the job of the Public Utilities Commission to make sure that that happens. So there's a lot of appointments that are really critical. So it's not just working with the legislature and enacting good laws and making sure they're really followed through on, but all of the appointments that a governor can make. So for instance, when we look at, we want to see a little more specificity in all of the candidates. We're looking forward to, I don't know if has there been any kind of candidate debate up here?
No. We've got a couple candidates here.
Yeah, but not together in one place and talking about that.
Just commissioners.
Yeah, we're looking forward to having many more robust debates, and we want to get people in those rooms to ask the right questions so that we're hearing directly from each candidate as specifically as possible what they would do, because for the most part I don't know exactly what they would translate into.
I don't either.
Yes, you know, one of the frustrations is, you know, in this build up to action in the U.S. House of Representatives but non-action in the U.S. Senate, that every single politician has been talking about energy independence. They all probably mean something different about energy